Hey there, it's me, Nate, and today I want to give you guys my thoughts on The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. This is the first book of his Dark Materials trilogy. Let me say that again. His Dark Materials trilogy. It gets a bit confusing if I say his Dark Materials. But anyway, as you may have seen from the thumbnail of this video, I found it really surprising that apparently a lot of kids grow up reading The Golden Compass and the other books of his Dark Materials trilogy as kids, considering the subject matter and the themes that the book covers. But before that, before I go into themes and and I guess also a little bit of controversy about the book, we should, rewind a little bit and talk about what the book is about. So, The Golden Compass, like I said, is the first book of a trilogy. I think, well, in America it's called The Golden Compass. In the UK and in, I think, most other regions is called by its original name, which is Northern Lights, which, if you've read the book, the Northern Lights makes way more sense as the title of the book. There is no compass in the Golden Compass. It's, there is a device, that has, but anyway, there is no actual compass in the Golden Compass, which I did not know until I read the book. And the name Northern Lights makes so much more sense, for a lot of reasons, which I won't get into because of spoilers. And so, The Golden Compass is this book about a girl named Lyra, and she is this young child. I think she's 10 or 11 when the book starts. No, I think she's like 10 when the book starts, and I think she's like 11 going on 12 by the time the book ends, something like that. And she is this little girl, and she's being raised in Jordan College in Oxford, England. And her parents, as far as she knows, have passed away, and she was brought to Jordan College by her uncle, Lord Asriel, so that way she could be raised and educated there in Jordan College by the staff and the scholars that work there in Jordan College. But one day, Lord Asriel returns to Jordan College to talk to the master of the college, and and ask for funding for a new expedition. And when he returns, there's a lot of scheming and politicking going around. There's this group that's going around kidnapping children called the Gobblers, and the other kids are going missing, and Lyra's asked to be taken away from Jordan College by this mysterious woman, and the adventure kind of goes off from there. But also, this world is very similar to ours, and there's countries there's they have the Northern Lights, they have the Aurora, they have Asia, they have England, but there's also differences. The church, even though it is a semi 1900s-esque era of time comparatively, technology-wise, seemingly, they are still very religious. The church has a lot of power. Think the Catholic Church, but honestly has a huge stranglehold on most of the world, and that comes into play with a lot of the plot and the politics that's going on in the story. I had a point. I don't know where I was going, but anyway, we'll come back to it. And talking about how their world is similar to ours, and each person in this world, each human being, has kind of an extension of themselves called a demon. I think it's pronounced demon. It might be pronounced daemon. It's Daemon. I never know how that's pronounced. And it's kind of like an extension of themselves, of their souls. It's like a kind of life companion that is like is also a part of them, but at the same time a reflection and extension of themselves. And when a person is a child, their demon can constantly change form, and it's like always an animal. So for example, like one minute it might be a mouse, and the next minute it might be like an armadillo or a bird or a fox or whatever. But as they age and go through puberty and become an adult, their demon will take on a set form and won't be able to change anymore. It locks in. For example, so some adults might have a bird forever, or they might have a dolphin, etc. And that comes in a huge play in the story. Again, I don't want to get into spoilers, because even though this came out in like 1995, I believe, I think a lot of people probably haven't read The Golden Compass, or their exposure to Golden Compass might only be the movie or the TV show His Dark Materials. And to give you some context from my own exposure to The Golden Compass and His Dark Materials, when I was a little kid, which I think the movie came out in the 2000s. I think we rented it one time. And it was hard to find, because where I live in America, I live, more towards the south, and I'm kind of in the Bible Belt. And for those who may be outside of America, the Bible Belt is very conservative Christian. So anything that any kind of like fiction that talks about Christianity in a possibly blasphemous way is a little bit more banned here, or harder to find. So when I was a kid, The Golden Compass was not something like I found in like my elementary school. I'm sure it was in bookstores, but it was never anything that I found like in school to read. So I wasn't really exposed to it in school. But I do remember watching the movie when I was a little kid. I didn't really like it that much, even when I was younger. And then when the show came out, I watched part of the first season, and I thought it was okay, but I ended up stopped watching it for whatever reason. I was probably distracted by something else. And so I hadn't really thought much about it until last year, when during Black Friday I bought my stack of books, and I go ahead and got The Golden Compass. But back to the point. So reading this book, I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel about it. At first, I was reading it, and I was like, oh, it seemed interesting enough. Like, this kind of like more like children or young fantasy from this like little girl's perspective. And then I start getting into it, and it's surprisingly dense. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, how do children read this? There's like a lot going on. And I was like looking a little bit at like Reddit threads, and a lot of people would say that, oh, I remember reading that as a kid, and then talking about when they went back and as an adult they realized how complex it is. And I think what probably happened is that like a lot of kids had this read to them by their parent as a child, and their thought was probably just like, oh, cool animals, and like an interesting child protagonist, and armored bears and stuff like that. But as an adult, or as you get older and you're reading this, you realize how, even though this is a story told from a child's perspective, this is a very adult fantasy story, or at least is a very coming of age story, because it is there. Like I mentioned earlier, there's talks of religion, there's talks of sin and identity, and growing up and becoming a person, and the things we do to children and to other people for the sake of what we think is right, what we think might be better for them. And I think it's a really interesting story. I think Pullman puts out a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts that really, challenge how you might think or how you feel about things, but not in a way that discredits any one way of thinking or another, but I think in a way that opens up a conversation. I I do know, that as the books go, a lot of people feel that the Golden Compass is the best one, and the books kind of get worse from there. I'll have to see as I go along through the series. But I will go ahead and give you my score now. I think I want to blab on a little bit more, but as for my score for the Golden Compass, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 stars, which on my scale is a great book. I think this really is a great book. I think it's an approachable read. It has like it's like one of those books that seems, on the surface level pretty easy, but as you get into it, it has a lot of like dense kind of subtext and a lot of interesting thoughts. There's a lot to chew on and like really think about. It's a book that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. And I feel like the more you put into yourself, the more you think about it, the more you get out of it. I think it's a really interesting story, and I'd really recommend it. So yeah, I think The Golden Compass is a great book. But let me continue on. Let me think. Was there any other highlights I want to hit? Because sometimes you're doing one of these reviews, and you might think, oh, afterwards when you're editing but you're posting it, and it's like, oh, I should have mentioned this and I forgot. I like the characters, because Lyra starts out, this kind of like annoying child that's always getting into things, is like very annoying and arrogant. But by the end of the story, at least by the end of this first book, she's gone through so much, seen so much, and it's like really shaken what she's seen. I mean, she's shaken what she has previously believed, what she previously felt, and she grows so much as a person. She goes through so much like trauma and personal growth that by the end of the story, she is a changed, different person than she is compared to the beginning of the book. And I think you can even notice it in the way of her dialogue, because it feels like as the story progressed, her dialogue changed and her vocabulary changed. It became more adult. It became more introspective. Whenever she had like her dialogue, either her inner dialogue or when she was talking to her demon. And so like as you go through the book, I feel like you as the reader can really appreciate the changes that Lyra goes through the story. And I thought that was really great, because when it comes to media, whether it's books or games or movies, I have a really hard time with like child protagonists. I usually find them extremely annoying, and I really dislike the trope of the child that can do everything, like the genius savant child that's like capable of everything. I find that usually really annoying. But Lyra's not that, thankfully. Like, she's she's a curious child, but she's not, at the beginning at least, she's, very coarse. She's, she hasn't been properly, like, raised, so she's, like, very lacking in manners. She's very brash, but she learns and develops as she goes, so you really feel the impact of her character growth. And alongside her, you have Lord Asriel, who is her uncle, and you see that she just wants his affection, but you can tell even from the beginning of the book, the way that he treats her, the way he talks to her, that he is like this very arrogant, calculating man that may present one way, but this is like a very flawed, dark person that she shouldn't be associating with. And we can see that as the reader, but she doesn't know that. And you can see how the adults that she kind of, scoffs at Jordan College, and that, she says that they don't have time for her, they don't pay attention to her, but you can see how, like, this, in the small ways that they look after her, how much, how precious she is to them. And then, you have the Egyptians, who are, I guess are like, Gypsy or Romany kind of culture in here in the world of his Dark Materials, because they are kind of like just nomadic, boating kind of culture where they have like these houseboats, and they go from kind of like port to port, you know, and sail around. Because a lot of their children have been taken by the gobblers, who are, you know, like I said, taking these a lot of people's kids for some mysterious reason. And excuse me. And so I think there's like some really interesting characters here with a lot of depth. I know from the second book on, they introduced kind of like a new main protagonist alongside Lyra, so I want to see how that goes. Because a lot of the characters that Lyra interacts with is like, you know, she is still so young that all the other characters are so much older than her. For the most part, there are a few other kids at certain points in the story. But like, none of the other kids that she interacts with on this book are as important as her. So it'd be interesting to see another important character kind of like on her same kind of like age range, and how that kind of, you know, how those two characters bounce off of each other. The other probably biggest character that I haven't gotten to yet is Yorick Burnison, and you don't meet him until like the second half of the book. And he is a bear, a talking bear, because bears, or at least these northern bears, are special, is that they can talk like humans and act like humans, but they do not have demons. And so they approach life differently. They're, you know, and the whole way that worked was so interesting to read about. But yeah, I think that's all I want to talk about Golden Compass. I feel like if I talk anymore, I'll give too much away. But I really do think that you should read this. Even if you think that it may seem like a children's story, I don't think it is. I think this is a story that can be appreciated by children and adults for different reasons. But I think this is an adult fantasy story from a child's perspective. And I think that's what makes it so approachable for so many people at different stages in their life. So if you haven't read the Golden Compass, I think you should really enjoy it. I mean, I think you should, because I think you will really enjoy it, I mean. But until next time, if you've made it to, you know, this far in the video, I thank you. And if you could subscribe to the channel and like this video, you know, I hope you have a good day, and until next time.